Rodriguez, this is a must-have. 4th down and 4. And ASU takes it away. Keith Abney.
Iowa State will get it back. Quick work by their defense after scoring the touchdown to make it one score again. And Flora, returnable punt, out of the first surge. He's got space, cuts it back. There goes Flora, the walk-on with a huge play to give Iowa State the lead.
Picked off, go the other way, and Elijah Davis will not come back. 65 yards. We tried to tell you, these corners are ruthless.
One more out. Swung on and missed. Got him. Arizona is the 2025 Big 12 champion.
And getting rid of the ball. 10 to shoot. Nunez. Bailey mopping for 3. And the dagger.
Bradley fires. And Houston, the Cougars are champions here in the Big 12.
Go Big 12 or go home. I'm Brandon Shanahan, joined as always by Drew Russell here on a Tuesday night live on Twitter, on YouTube the next day, on Spotify some weeks when I remember to put it together. How are we doing, Drew Russell?
Brandon Shanahan, we are 8 days away from Thanksgiving. I, for one, am excited already, but man, oh man, are we starting to cook in the world of college football. There has been continued chaos all across the board. We got a new bracket out. We have Big 12 teams that are rising, Big 12 teams that are falling. For 2 games left for the majority of the teams, and there is still a lot to be determined going forward. So exciting times right now in the world of college sports and Big 12 as well.
And I do got to say, I feel like every week we come on here, like, what's the best case for the Big 12 to get multiple bids in? It feels like now we're halfway through November, and there's a pretty clear picture of what that looks like. And we'll break down the Big 12 here shortly. But first, I wanted to do our weekly coaching carousel segment, since there seems to be always something going on. Since the last time we hopped on, James Franklin, now the new head football coach at Virginia Tech. I mean, not currently the head coach, but like the currently coach to be in waiting after the season. Once the current coach packs up his office. Very weird timing, but I get it. Virginia Tech is their guy. James Franklin, huge home run hit for Virginia Tech. You know, you could make the case that James Franklin walks into the ACC as the best coach.
I mean, I'll tell you this, Brandon. What's I think exciting for Virginia Tech and for Coach James Franklin. For Coach James Franklin, I feel like he's walking into a eerily similar situation that he did over 10 years ago when he first started at Penn State. Penn State was, again, just a few years before, went through all their scandals, kind of still trying to figure things out. And Coach Franklin was brought in, 6-7 win team, say, hey, can you get us a little bit higher? And he was able to elevate that program. Virginia Tech's in a worse spot than even Penn State was in terms of the win-loss record currently. So they've got a great fan base. There is money there. And I do think it's a very good fit on both sides. I think for Virginia Tech, it is absolutely a home run hire. Now, in the world of college sports, Brandon, we've learned home run hires aren't a sure thing in the long run. So, of course, he has to still go out, produce. But, man, considering that the ACC is just such an up and down, unpredictable league, they're still trying to figure out a way to get into the college football playoff as a conference. And this is a big opportunity, I think, for Coach Franklin and for Virginia Tech. And wouldn't be shocked if they are in college football playoff contention within his first, I'll say, 3 to 4 years there. And I think they can have a winning program built even as early as next year.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of go into the outlook. Obviously, we had talked a lot about him possibly going to an SEC school, a place with the kind of resources that maybe even Penn State doesn't have with winning a national championship. but there is something to be said. Like if you get buy-in at Virginia Tech, and you get something rolling, the path to the playoff is much easier in a conference like the ACC and the Big 12. I mean, we were talking about Duke possibly making the college football playoff just a week ago, and they're barely over 500. Now, granted, that's an outlier, and that's not what James Franklin wants to have be his marquee playoff team. But there is something to be said for that, is that you maybe lose a couple of mulligans, but every game's going to be very winnable, very early on, especially the way that he recruits up in the Northeast. I mean, I know he had some success at Vanderbilt, and he's been in the SEC before, but the way that he's really put Penn State's on a whole new level recruiting-wise is something that's going to translate very well and very easily to Virginia Tech, especially if there's the buy-in that it seems like there is going to be, and it seems like he's going to have, it's going to be an arms race, and Virginia Tech's going to be right in the thick of it.
I mean, for James Franklin, Brandon, again, at this time last year, he had a top 5 team in Penn State, a team that would go on its way to the national semifinal game and be a field goal away from making the national championship game last year. And, he goes through that bad 3+ week stretch this year. Penn State says that's enough and move on. But boy, he has coached so many great players throughout the years, Brandon. He's taken a lot of players to the NFL, which obviously is a big deal to any college recruit. So for him to, I think, come to Virginia Tech, a place that in the past has had a lot of pride, especially under Coach Frank Beamer, this is an exciting time for Hokie football. And absolutely on their end, the clear correct hire. Don't overthink it. This is a guy who has a track record of success, has coached a lot of top 10 teams. Yeah, have they won the big game consistently under him at Penn State? No, they didn't beat Ohio State often enough. Michigan often enough. But you know what, Brandon Shanahan? They had a lot of 9, 10, 11 win seasons. And for right now, if you're Virginia Tech, you happily would take that, I think, for the next few years.
And it's so funny when people bring that up, because it feels like that's the reason why he got fired. But you know who else has beaten Ohio State? Michigan, Georgia. That's the end of the list over the last 3 years. And that's it. 36 games, they've lost to 2 teams. It's an unbelievable run. Unbelievable kind of standard to get there. But, I mean, it is what it is. Sometimes a guy just kind of outwears his welcome. And Virginia Tech gets to benefit from that. Let me ask, you're probably more plugged in on this than I am, but it seemed like there's a lot of Arkansas fans that are pretty bummed that he ended up going to Virginia Tech instead of Fayetteville. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, and that's Arkansas fans just in general, Brandon Shanahan. Obviously, the rumor mill of Arkansas fans is always going to be off the rails. I mean, this is a fan base that will latch onto any coach pretty freaking quickly. I mean, the John Gruden train, they feel that one was semi-realistic at one point. Heck, they were targeting, or not targeting, excuse me, but they had to go out and confirm they said that we're not interested in Ed Ogeron at all. And I mean, Coach O at Arkansas would be quite humorous, I won't lie,
No
but
kidding.
probably a good thing.
Not a bad fit.
Not a bad fit, but I mean, Coach O is too, he's Louisiana through and through. It'd be tough to coach against his beloved Tigers. So I think for that specifically, there might have been a little bit of realistic effort in terms of, that they were trying to get him. But, again, from Coach Franklin's standpoint, I mean, I don't blame him for going to Virginia Tech over Arkansas. I mean, just from the standpoint of, yes, ACC is an easier conference than the SEC in terms of there's not the top-heavy power that the SEC currently has. Now, ACC has a lot of good quality teams. We're seeing that this year in terms of it's a competitive conference. I mean, you want parity. ACC is delivering on that. No one's going to deny that this year. But, if Coach Franklin, if he's thinking what's the easiest path to the college football playoff, Virginia Tech is just a simpler – I mean, it is. Yeah. It's just a simpler path than Arkansas, which, again, Arkansas has money, resources, but it's a tough job right now. And unfortunately, nobody's won there at a high level the last 15+ years now. And if I'm being honest, almost 25 to 30 years at this juncture if you take out the 2, 3, 4 year stretch of Bobby Petrino. So it is kind of interesting just where Arkansas football is currently slated, and I don't blame Coach Franklin for going Virginia Tech route.
No, and it's just it's tough because you they not only do they have to compete with the Georgias and Alabamas and Oklahomas of the world, but they also have this elite basketball program that they're funneling a bunch of money into. And like, everybody's a basketball school until you get good at football. I think we're seeing that very clearly in Indiana.
Yeah.
But with that said, like, there's still this kind of split investment, and even with the insane boosters that feed Arkansas, um, there's still nothing. It's still such an uphill battle.
Yeah. Well, and I think for Arkansas's fan base too, Brandon, like, last night they had a basketball game. They played Winthrop, good Winthrop team in Fayetteville. Top 25 Arkansas team, really exciting team. I think can do very well in the SEC this year. They didn't even have half full capacity at Bud Walton Arena
Really?
last night, which was pretty shocking. Um, I bet less than 10,000 people in terms of fans in seats for, a good team in Arkansas. I mean, they are good. And that was a good Winthrop team, a team that I think will potentially make the NCAA tournament. And it was a 2-point game that Arkansas won. But yeah, I mean, for Arkansas's fan base and for any coach looking at that job right now, I mean, it is a pretty daunting task. It's not easy to win there. And again, if you're a great coach, you can win anywhere. I mean, we're seeing that where you saw Kurt Signetti strike lightning in a bottle everywhere he's gone. He's currently doing that at Indiana. But that said, Brandon, not easy. Good fit, though, if I'm Virginia Tech. Good fit if I'm James Franklin. And if you're Penn State, little less money you owe him on his buyout as well.
Yeah, what a good deal for Penn State, and that's one of the things that I pointed out early in the search is, I mean, people are pointing and laughing at that big buyout that they had to pay him. I'm like, he's going to be coaching next year anyways, making 8, 9, 10 million, maybe not 10 million, but $8, $9 million. It's going to offset most of that contract and offset most of that buyout. Now, it's easier to point and laugh at LSU if Brian Kelly decides to sit on his hands and just chill out, enjoy retirement for a few years. They brought that up on this Husker show because that's exactly what Bo Pelini did. Is that he took a couple of years off, made Nebraska pay out that entire buyout, and then also made them issue monthly payments. So every month he's showing up on the payroll. Shout out Bo Pelini, Petty King, well deserved, honestly. And then eventually took the job at Youngstown State, making $1 to $2 million a year. So Nebraska's still on the hook for that. So I knew that wasn't going to be the case for Penn State's. Very much the case for Jimbo Fisher. Very much the case on the table for Brian Kelly if he doesn't want to rush back into it. Interesting stuff going on throughout the college carousel because now we're also seeing other coaches that seem to be candidates like Kurt Signetti, like Rhett Lashley at SMU, signing these extensions to confirm they're staying, they're not in the buzz. And I didn't think much of this until this week, but like Lane Kiffin, if he was planning on staying, like I thought would be a good move for him, he hasn't. He hasn't. In a world where other coaches have.
No, you're right. Like, going across the board, you look at a Lane Kiffin, that's a whole unique situation there at Ole Miss. I think if I'm Lane Kiffin, I'll be blunt, Brandon. I'd stay at Ole Miss. I would.
I would too.
He's got a really good. I have a really good situation there. It is a really good fan base. Now, does their stadium get as loud as, say, Tiger Stadium in Baton Rouge or the Swamp in Gainesville? Probably not, based on decibel levels. But I'll tell you what Ole Miss does have. They have a great a solid tradition. He's built already. He's got all the infrastructure built already. Like, he doesn't have to rebuild a program.
Yeah, that's his program, built entirely in Lane Kiffin's
program.
name. That's not nothing.
It is his program. Yeah, and that fan base is. He's. You get as an SEC coach, if you have a big enough personality, even if you lose a few games, fan bases are going to be a little more forgiving if you have like a electric personality. And Lane Kiffin has an electric personality. I look at Coach Mike Leach when he was everywhere he's been, Texas Tech, Washington State. in Mississippi State. When he was all at all those schools, Brandon, he had some great teams. He also had some seasons that they were oftentimes 500 or just a little above 500. But you know what? A lot of people didn't care because it's Coach Leach, most quotable guy on the planet
Yeah.
from a press conference standpoint. So the media loved him. Fan bases loved him because the guy just didn't sugarcoat anything. So even if he had just an average season by his standards, people were pretty forgiving at all three of those schools he was at. I think Lane Kiffin has that same situation at Ole Miss where, yes, they do expect winning. And yes, if he was to have, for some reason, 2 to 3 straight losing seasons, his job probably would be on the line or he would be fired. But if he goes 7-5, they're not going to lose their minds in Oxford. Or I would hope not. Unlike, say, Alabama with Kalen DeBoer, where DeBoer, he loses his second game, Brandon, against OU over the weekend. Shoot, if they lose to Auburn, season finale, they're out of the college football playoff. And do you want to be him into the offseason where
No
you've
kidding.
missed
Oh
two
my God.
straight college football playoffs already? Like, I mean, his seat would be hotter than hot. Like, no one really wants that. So if I'm Kiffin, you have to like the setup you've got in Oxford, but we'll see.
Yeah.
It's his call. He's going to make a lot of money no matter what, whether Ole Miss ponies up a little bit more or whether he decides to get a giant check from Florida or LSU.
Well, and that's the thing is that it's hard to imagine that like money's the issue at all here. I mean, I gotta imagine Ole Miss would be like, we'll give you whatever you want, in any way, shape, or form when it comes to resources. But it's getting to the point where like if he was committed to staying at Ole Miss, you would do that because now that there's this whole benefit of your recruiting class, keeping that intact and keeping that kind of stability, especially throughout the rest of college football, where you're recruiting against a Florida, you're recruiting against LSU, who just has question marks, and that's such an advantage to be like, we have something good here, we have something stable, we have something great. If he was gonna stay, I'm starting to think like at this point, he would have made it clear by now.
Yeah, I would think so too. But who knows, Brandon? I mean, in this world of college football, I mean, we're in the great time of year in SEC football where we have people literally hanging out at tarmacs of airports, watching planes come in, and the flight trackers and all of that. I mean, SEC football, every conference is insane in its own way, including our beloved Big 12. But when it comes to just sheer chaos, the southern states, despite all of their issues in so many other areas of those states, they are the kings when it comes to football drama. There's nothing like state of Alabama, state of Mississippi, state of Louisiana, Georgia, Kentucky, Tennessee, when it comes to just sheer football drama from those fan bases.
Last to go around. We've talked about it every week now, but I can't wait to see how this coaching carousel takes out because college football is going to look so different this time next year, just in the faces moving around. It's unbelievable, and there's still coaches that are going to get fired at the end of the season who just haven't gotten the boot yet, or could be leaving. So I kind of want to shift this back to the Big 12. It seems like the firings cooled down throughout a bit. We've already lost Mike Gundy. But are there any other coaches that you think could be on the move? I think Kenny Dillingham's staying. Who else do you think could be on the move?
Oh man, yeah, that's a good question, Brandon. I think right now you kind of look at the conference as a whole. I think a couple of guys just to keep an eye on in general. I mean, I am keeping an eye on that state of Kansas a little bit. And I know that they've both had seasons that on paper aren't great, but I still would like to think Lance Leipold has interest potentially from other college football programs a little bit. You have to look at Chris Kleiman and say these guys can coach. So I am keeping an eye on kind of those guys just a little bit because they have had good success. Now, another guy that I don't think is going to go anywhere, but you just have to tip your cap and say, you know what? He's done a lot of winning at pretty much pretty much every place he's been. That's Coach Willie Fritz at Houston, Brandon. I mean, he's been winning every program he's touched. It's turned around. And Grant, he's in his 60s. Houston might be kind of that destination. Like this is kind of it in terms of hopping and jumping to coaches areas. But let's just give credit where it's due. He's had a great year. Houston's been good this year. So I think that's somebody also to keep an eye on a little bit as well. I'm not saying seriously on any of those people, but I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's tough to say. A couple of spots that I got my eye on is Baylor, a little bit less, just kind of seeing how things are shaping up. It's certainly a disappointing season because this was supposed to be kind of their popping off year. This was supposed to be the year with Sawyer Robinson coming back, and you finally get at least a little bit of a momentum from 2 years ago to last year, and it hasn't happened yet. So it feels like in a normal coaching cycle, he might be on the move or might be on his way out. But again, with this coaching cycle, you might want to hang on to a guy like that for a year just to not have to go out and figure something out on the fly. Another one I'm keeping my eye on is just how disastrous it's been in Boulder and how that's kind of unfolded as of late. And of course, Coach Prime has his health concerns, and that's a whole different piece. I don't think he's in the verge of getting fired at for any stretch of the imagination, but you do have to look at things like it could be a spot where maybe he's like, all right, maybe this isn't what I thought it would be. Maybe my plan and my vision for how I wanted this college football coaching gig to go is going. Maybe it's time to step back and reevaluate things. And then the state of Kansas, Chris Kleiman has been that Kansas State team has been such a disappointment this year. They picked up a win against Oklahoma State, but barely, 14-6, and Boone Pickens and the worst team in the Big 12, and they just haven't gotten anything going. Kansas is interesting just because you want to have some buzz with the new stadium. Any way
Yeah.
that you can get butts into seats with that kind of investment is going to be something to keep your eye on. But it's, again, like, do you want to sacrifice that stability for, competing in this coaching cycle where, I mean, if Kansas fires their coach, they're automatically at least the second best Big 12 job that comes open.
Yeah.
Certainly would look at Oklahoma State being a more favorable destination, but it's
Yeah.
it's interesting. And yeah, Willie Fritz has done such a good job at Houston. And again, in a regular coaching cycle, I don't think he gets the tempting enough offer to leave the good thing he's got going on in Houston.
Yeah.
But you're going to have a lot of teams that are looking for coaches. And Willie Fritz has been
Right.
outstanding everywhere he's been. He's probably going to get some calls. So it's going to be fascinating to see how this impacts the Big 12 and
Yeah.
moving forward. Scott
No, and
Satterfield's done a
it
great
is
job at
Brandon.
Cincinnati too.
He has. He has. And and I think, again, for Coach Fritz, and I'm talking Coach Fritz in terms of going to other schools, of course, not
Yeah.
getting fired. No
No.
one's got fired. I would boot Houston into the Gulf of America if we had that. Yeah, shout out to Gulf of America tonight. It's interesting, Brandon, when you look at and I'm happy you brought up Colorado. It's such a fascinating situation, Boulder, because they have had a disastrous season. And, on paper, I think a lot of places that could be a potentially fireable season or trouble or whatever that may be. But I also am like, it's been problems in a lot of years. And with Deion Sanders, they are still getting a lot of booster money coming in, NIL money. So even though it's a unique situation there, I mean, they've got to stick with him, in my opinion, just at least for a little more time. And that Kansas situation is fascinating with Coach Kleiman because a couple of years ago, Brandon, that team went 9-4, 2023. It felt like Kansas was really ready to take that next jump. And we were hyping them up going into the 2024 season. And look, historically, Brandon, a 5-7 season, that's a good season at Kansas. But it was disappointing for them last year how they turned out. They're 5-5 this year, and they've got two pretty tough games left at Iowa State and then at home versus Utah. So bowl eligibility is going to be an absolute fight for them to get back and make their third bowl in the last 4 years. So yeah, like if they don't make a bowl game again, look, I don't think Coach Kleiman's not going or excuse me, Coach Leipold's not going anywhere in terms of firing. But I would be curious if there's still schools that are like, you know what, this guy's winning at a place just people don't usually win at. Would there be a little bit of interest if he could jump to another job? I don't know, but interesting setup across the board. And I think with the Big 12 right now, Brandon, I think those are the jobs to keep an eye on. Coach Frost, even though UCF has had kind of an abysmal season in conference, again, year one for Coach Frost. He's not going to go anywhere. Coach Rodriguez, I think, has made some actually good strides the last 3-4 weeks from West Virginia. It feels like they're playing more do that 3 times, more competitive football in general. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to break down and other things, but that's kind of, I think, the general takeaway from my end.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It'll be fascinating to see how this all shapes up, but nonetheless, got some more updates as far as how the college football playoff picture is shaping up and the Big 12 becoming a real player for multiple bids. We've talked about Texas Tech being like a genuine contender, and now all of a sudden, BYU is still in the mix. Utah's in the top 12, and the Big 12. I think for the first time, it feels like they're in prime position to really take hold of a couple of different bids here, especially seeing how the rest of college football is shaping up. I mean, we talked about that 11-win threshold. It feels like if that holds strong, that's going to warrant multiple bids, especially if Texas Tech were to stumble in the Big 12 title game. It's hard to keep them out with as good as that they've looked and the talent that they're clearly showing. It seems like it's this is as good of a year for the Big 12 to get multiple bids as I could have expected.
I would fully agree with that, Brandon. I think, for BYU, looking at them at 11, look, they have a tough, interesting game coming up this week when they travel, or they're at home last week of the season against UCF, which on paper looks good for them. But again, tough game in terms of a tricky game at Cincinnati this upcoming week, prime time game. That'll add to kind of the enjoyment of that for them. Look, if they can take care of the rest of their regular season effort, Brandon, and walk into Arlington with just one conference loss, and they win it. I mean, it's impossible. It's impossible to keep Tech out. So that'd be a 2-bid league. And it would be interesting to see how the committee, if it is BYU, they can win their last 2, make the conference championship game. If they lose to Tech again, 2 losses both against that same Tech team, how does the committee view that? And would that still be enough for them to go potentially still get a road playoff game against one of these teams? I think BYU's earned it, Brandon. I think defensively they've been great. If they take care of their next 2, I think no matter what happens that Big 12 championship game, they deserve that opportunity to go play in the college football playoff. And again, for Utah, I mean, it's too bad on paper. These are 2 tough games going up, at least in terms of, I think, the talent of these teams in Kansas and Kansas State. But again, 500 clubs, Brandon. So they win. It's kind of we'd expect you to win. If they lose, obviously they're beyond toast. So that's kind of, I think, the breakdown right now. But I think you're right. Last year, we kind of both knew we're only getting one team in. And we knew late October, early November last year. This year, on the other hand, Big 12's positioned themselves quite nicely for a potential multi-bid league.
And we always talk about strength of conference when it comes to these conversations. But you also got to tip your cap. The Big 12 has more bottom feeders in the league than it did this time last year. It feels like where, Texas Tech has looked like a juggernaut. 1 loss coming with the backup quarterback. Tough draw there. But otherwise, they have looked like a genuine college football national championship contender. But now you have a little bit more freebies on the bingo sheet with teams like Oklahoma State underperforming, Kansas State underperforming, where last year felt like you had a lot of really good teams in BYU and Iowa State and Arizona State and even Colorado picked up 9 wins throughout the regular season. But then that, tends to fester at you. So, I mean, how much of a benefit is there being more bagged teams in the Big 12 than even compared to last year, which feels like a crazy logic. You should, if you have more good teams, that should be a plus, but that's not the world we live in, Drew Russell.
No, it's not. It's good to have some bottom feeders in the conference. We're seeing that. Well, we're seeing the Big Ten benefit, SEC, ACC. Bottom feeders are kind of necessary in a conference. I mean, I look at the 10-team Big 12 era where, it was nice to know that you could rely on Kansas to usually be at the bottom of the standings traditionally. Traditionally, you could rely on, many years ago, an Iowa State being towards the bottom of the standings. Certain teams, you could just depend on that. And when you've got, 3, 4 teams, really, UCF, Colorado, Oklahoma State, that just are not at the competitive level they would like to be. West Virginia showing improvement, but they're still 2-6 in conference. That does help boost up the rest of the conference. It does make some of those wins really, really nice. And again, if you're taking care of those bottom feeders, then it just boosts that strength of schedule, not strength of schedule, excuse me, but it does help make those top contenders fatter in terms of the win column. And yeah, that boosts the strength of schedule when those two teams play. So it's nice to have bottom feeders this year. And even though I'm still this mega conference era, Brandon, is a wild one, and I'm sure we'll have an off-season podcast about how I still don't think it's good for college sports in general to have these giant
awful
conferences. It is. I mean, just from a sheer geographical location. I mean, of our big four, I mean, the only one that still is kind of geographically semi-accurate is the SEC. I mean, everybody else is spread out all over the country. That's just a fact. So, yeah, like I think in general, when you look at the Big 12, though, it does help those top teams. And for Texas Tech, you look at that, their wins, Brand. I mean, Texas Tech has some big wins. I mean, they played BYU, beat them. Houston, beat them. Utah, beat them. Those are big wins for Texas Tech, just in terms of just in-conference play. And Arizona State got them, but again, competitive game, and Arizona State absolutely deserved that win. But again, when you kind of can eat up on the lower portion of the league, it makes those bigger teams up top fatter. So, yeah, it's good for the league. Whether you believe it or not, in this world, you need bottom feeders. AD teams like my beloved Arkansas Razorbacks, the SEC right now, to help those teams up top.
Yeah, I mean the Big 12 doesn't benefit from taking on the Citadel in late November, so you gotta make hay while you can in a 9-game conference schedule.
You do, no, you do, and really make hay if you have an 8-game conference schedule. So I want to just pour one out for the SEC 8-game conference schedule. Was an iconic run for decades.
Well, like that's in that now that we're comparing these leagues, like that's if all these teams who are going to finish with 9 and 10 wins have an extra conference game, like statistically speaking, some of those teams are going to get an extra loss. That's just how it goes, and that's something that the Big 10 doesn't deal with, something that the Big 12 doesn't deal with. So it's nice that the SEC is finally back on board. So welcome to
it's
the
nice for them.
Century.
Yeah, shout out to the SEC. They are a little behind on the times, but the South has traditionally struggled to be, with the times now and then too. So respect to the South, of course.
Love the South, but yeah, a little bit behind.
They're a little behind on a few things
when it comes to things like that. But I'm right there with you. I'm stoked for how this college football season is going to shape up. But another good week for the Big 12 in Big 12 football play. A couple of big games throughout. Let's go through kind of the stinkers. Kansas State, Oklahoma State. On ESPNU, 14-6, Kansas State finds a way to win against a Oklahoma State team who they haven't won a Big 12 game since 2023, have they? Did they pick up one last year?
Oh man, I'm gonna look it up quick, Brandon. But am I dumb enough to say no?
They had to.
Yeah,
they
went. Nope. 3-9 last year and 0-9 in conference play.
Oh my gosh!
So the last time they had a Big 12 victory was 2023. They beat BYU in double overtime at home to get into the conference championship game. May I add?
That's right. They almost made the
and then
football
lost.
Playoff.
They did. They were close. That they lost to Texas in the Big 12 championship game, and then beat Texas A&M in the Texas Bowl. So there you go.
Which means more.
So Oklahoma State. Yep, it just means so much more. So Oklahoma State right now, Brandon, they're in the midst of a 16-game conference losing streak, which is shocking. It is.
That is a
16
a tough draw.
Yeah, that's violent. So yeah, not good. And yeah, I did catch about 6 to 8 minutes. I almost said 6-2, that awful number ahead of it to follow trends, but I said 6-8. And I just want to say, Brandon Shanahan, you don't love your life if you watch Kansas State, Oklahoma State,
I mean,
and you're not a fan of either team. You
that is
don't
a
love.
sicko kind of game, unfortunately.
Yeah, if I was outside the window saying, ah, ha, ha, yes, that's what I was doing, just rubbing my hands together. So, yeah, it was a disgusting game. It really was.
Yeah, so we'll won't spend too much time on that one. Arizona State's pulled out a squeaker against West Virginia. Rich Rod getting those guys right. And we talked about Arizona State a little bit before coming off of a bye where Kenny Dillingham said just go home, take the week off. I was curious how they would come out and play that game. Not a great run for Arizona State. Now, granted, they still have Jeff Sims at quarterback, so you know I know how that story ends as a former Jeff Sims defender through and through. New that is what it is, but was curious result in Tempe nonetheless.
Yeah, they got it done at the very end of the day, Brandon. And I mean, again, for Arizona State, setting themselves up to have a really good bowl situation next month, which is great. I think for West Virginia, again, they're not going to be in a bowl game, but I think they've got some real potential with freshman quarterback Scotty Fox
Yeah.
Jr. He's been really, I think, getting better every single week overall. And after kind of a sluggish start to the season, he's been pretty good overall, over 60% completion rate. So I think there's some potential there with them. So I think that's encouraging for them with just one game left in the season. But yeah, Arizona State got it done on paper, still keep their Big 12 hopes alive.
Yeah, and I mean for West Virginia, this is exactly what you're trying to look for. Is even if you're not picking up actual victories, like the moral victories, like all right, let's see some of this stuff start to work, and so good news for them. Fortunately for the Big 12, as we just mentioned, nice to have bottom feeders. Maybe West Virginia won't be as much of a bottom feeder next year. Good for the folks in Morgantown, they deserve it, but bad for the Big 12 for some reason. That's how it goes. A few other
Yep.
blowouts. Texas Tech over UCF, 48-9 in Lubbock. BYU took care of business against TCU in Provo, 44-13. And then Utah handling Baylor on the road, 55-28 to continue their Big 12 hopes and squandering any hopes that Baylor has a positive season.
You know what's crazy about that game, Brandon? If you told me one team as a team passed 8 of 16 for 103 yards and 2 touchdowns, 0 picks, and the other team passed for 29 of 58 but for 430 yards and 3 touchdowns, who would you would say would win more than likely?
I mean, that seems like a winning formula to me.
Yeah, like
Seems like an
all
easy
those yards.
pick.
Baylor to have Sawyer Robertson throw for 430 yards and still lose by 27 is remarkable. And again, Utah's rushing game just great. I mean, they had as a team 43 carries, 380 yards, 5 touchdowns total, multiple big runs. Just credit where it's due. Defensively, 7 tackles for loss, couple of sacks. Utah just keeps getting it done, and you got to hand it to them after all the drama on their team last year, all the jokes on this podcast.
Lots of pointing and laughing came from this set right here.
Lots of laughing. Let's just give Utah credit. They've went out. I think have played some great football this year. Their fan base has calmed down, kind of, but they're more tolerable this year. And they've had a great season, Brandon. I want to give the Utes a lot of credit. They've
Yeah.
had a really nice season in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, they're right in the thick of it. 8-2 in the league, or 8-2 overall, 5-2 in the league. Again, a couple of tough losses to Texas Tech and BYU, who currently sit in the top
Mm-hmm.
12. So if you're looking at the season, good year for Utah. Again, good for the Big 12 down the stretch. If you get a team like Utah who's consistently pushing the envelope, and then maybe some of those Utah fans got a little bit humbled coming to the better league in the Big 12, where we
Mm-hmm.
actually compete for college football playoff bids, um, as opposed to the last few years of the Pac-12. But
Yeah.
that's promising to see. And then the big game that kind of shook up the Big
Ooh.
12 standings, Arizona taking care of business on the road against Cincinnati. That's the one game that kept me from having a perfect week in our pick'em. I talked about it like this feels like a perfect week for one of us, one way or the other.
Mhm.
And Arizona spoiled that. If, Cincinnati's still in it, but they're not. They're not going to make Arlington. But they're
No.
tough loss. No Fafita did no Fafita things, and that's not an easy place to go and win, especially if you're coming all the way from Arizona.
No, it's not. I get a lot of credit to Arizona, Brandon. I think after 3 of 4 close losses to BYU and Houston, they've come back and played good football again, winning the game they should at Colorado, winning a close game against Kansas, and then going on the road and winning against a quality Cincinnati team. For them, they've got to be pleased with how this season played out because they were kind of a
Unbelievably
disappointment
pleased.
to me. Yeah, I mean, because last year was a disappointment for me for them. And yes, I knew they lost their coach to Washington. They were trying to figure things out, but like I was disappointed with Arizona
Yeah,
last
you
year
had no
just with all the
Fafita,
talent they
Techno
had
Millen
back.
coming back. Like that's seemed to be one of
Right.
the best QB wide receiver combos in the country,
Yeah.
and for them to kind of come out like that, that's tough.
Yeah. And this year they've been much better. I think vice versa again. I think Cincinnati's ahead of schedule right now of I think where you and I both thought they'd be going into this. But boy, this is a home game, great crowd on Saturday. And for them to not find a way to get it done at home, that's a painful, painful loss against a team that had to fly quite a few time zones to get
Yep.
to where you were at for your Skyline Chili. So at the end of the day, just not there for them, but for Arizona. Again, I think, and I'm excited to do report cards when we get into the off season of how these teams did across the board this year. But I think just in general, just quality stuff if you look at it across the board.
Yeah, outlook is high for Arizona moving forward. 7-3 on the year, 4-3 in conference play, and of course the basketball team's always gonna improve the outlook there. So outstanding stuff for Arizona to come in. But I mean that's what we talked about. Like that's a kind of uh, battle wounds that you get when you have many good teams and a lack of a great team. So that's that's how it is. But we'll pivot
Yeah.
on back to our pick'em. Very interesting week. We're pretty much aligned throughout a lot of the slates. We both whiffed on Cincinnati, and then the BYU TCU game was the I don't want to say backbreaker, but 2 points down the stretch. That's not easy to come back from.
Mm-hmm. It's not Brendan Shanahan, and now it's all about risk in these last 2 weeks. And it's can you find the right risk? In the world of business and business transactions, you want to make sure you're getting the right guys to places, and that's what we're going to try to do this week: is finding the right points to the winning column. So tough break. Really had faith in TCU, and LOL at that,
Yeah,
but still in it. We'll wrap it out of the hat.
yeah, that was a bold take, but BYU pulling out the big win in Provo. But we had a fresh slate this week. We got what is it, 7 games? 7 games to pick from. And now as bias start to become unavailable, there's some points on the board here. But we got Kansas, Iowa State, Baylor, Arizona, Oklahoma State, UCF, Kansas State at Utah, TCU at Houston, BYU and Cincinnati, and then Arizona State and Colorado for the late night game. As always, we'll start with our most confident game and then work our way down 7-1. And for me, oh boy, let's see here. There's got to be an easy one I'm overlooking. Give me Arizona State on the road to Colorado. Not tough. Juju Lewis getting the keys to the castle,
Mhm.
but Arizona State's got to try to find some momentum down the stretch. This feels like what you got to get.
That's a pretty solid pick, Brandon. I do really like. I think the potential of that for them, and I am going to follow you. I am going to go Arizona State for 7. Yeah, I'm going to be safe and boring. So yeah, I'm going to
Hey,
start
you
with
never go
that, and
broke
then
making
6.
deposits.
Fantastic, Brandon Shanahan, and shout out to all employers that have direct deposit.
Of course.
If you don't have direct deposit, Brandon Shanahan and I once had to deal with. It's annoying to have to cash your checks. That 30-second process is brutal. Shout out to all employers that do
Yep.
direct deposit. That said, point game. Oh boy, Give me Utah over Kansas State. Tough game. Love it. Same time, K-State, there's still just something missing out of the team. And I love the way Utah's rushing the football right now.
Yeah, I am trying to find another game that keeps us from going back to back, but I just can't do it. Utah at home,
Yeah.
CFP aspirations still on the line, and Kansas State, uninspiring performance against Oklahoma State. So it is what it is. We're in lockstep here. The first two picks, and then from there, man, it's tricky because like I don't love UCF, but Oklahoma State kind of feels like the free space on our card. Even though they battled Kansas State pretty well, the defense showed up. Could certainly give UCF fits, but I'll go Arizona at home against Baylor. I mean, we're really splitting hairs here in this middle part of the order, but somebody's got to pick 5 points, and I like the way that Arizona's playing.
Well, Brandon, this I'm gonna feel really stupid if this doesn't work out. But in Scott Frost, we trust this week. I'm gonna take UCF at home for 5. Have they done anything to inspire me? Not necessarily. Maybe not even at this confidence level. But what is Oklahoma State? We just say they're on a 16-game losing streak. So
Going on the road to the
until that
bounce house. Even when Oklahoma State was good a couple of years ago, they fell short of the bounce house.
it's true. So I got to go that for 5. Then after that, oh boy. But I don't love any of these kind of going forward. Yeah, I want to break away so much, but I can't yet. I've got to go Arizona for 4. I don't have the guts to split from Baylor.
I get it.
Yeah, I can't do it.
That's
Yeah.
a favorable draw. Here for
Yeah.
my 4 points, this feels like one that can break my heart a little bit, but I like Iowa State at home. They won a game that they stole a game against TCU going into the bye week, and if you can just get Rocco Beck playing 75%, this should be an easy game. But he's, it's been tough sledding for the Rock. So I like them here. I mean, we'll see what Kansas is made of if they've got good structure down the stretch here, and what's been a pretty disappointing season for them. And then for my 3-point pick, yeah, I'll go to Orlando here. I'll take the Knights of Central Florida for 3. Again, not very inspiring, but Oklahoma State's been that uninspiring. Actually, no, I already typed it. I was thinking, boy, because here's the problem with me, and here's why I'm so glad that the state of Texas doesn't allow sports betting, because my mind goes to Oklahoma State's due for one. They're due for one. This is
You're right.
taking their due. It burned me last year during Thanksgiving. We talked about that last week with just the betting that Oklahoma State would not go a whole year without winning a Big 12 game, and they did. So I'm staying put with UCF at 3.
Oh man, this just keeps getting tougher. You got 3 pretty fascinating games. That BYU Cincinnati game, I've got to wait. I think. I don't really love Iowa State, Brandon, because it's Iowa State. And even in that win over TCU, it's not like they played great,
No.
but they fought. Kansas crushed them last year in Arrowhead.
That they did.
Like, that was annihilation. The big question for me is Iowa State remember that? And will they use it on senior day? I need the points eventually, but I can't do it here. I've got to take Iowa State for 3. It kills me because I've got to break away eventually. Or I wait till next week when we have 8 nutty games. I don't have to necessarily do it. But I'm going to do that. And then for 2, oh boy. Tough. Give me BYU for 2. Tough game on the road at night in Cincinnati. But you know what? I think they find a way to get it done. I trust that run game. And I think that defense forces multiple turnovers on Sorsby.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I admittedly, I probably, looking at the board, wish I would have gone with Houston for a little bit higher points. And Houston has been solid. But the way that TCU has been down the stretch, it's really hard to imagine them putting anything together. I mean, they're not just losing, they're having those kind of back-breaking losses that can really suck the air out of a locker room. Up big against Arizona State, you blow that game. You're up in control against Iowa State at home, and you let that one slip through your fingers. It just feels like a back-breaking year for TCU, and it's tough to imagine them bouncing back against a team like Houston that, they're not going to light you up and be elite in any way of the field, but they're going to make you earn it. If you're going to go into Houston, get a win, I don't think TCU has that kind of power. Here, I'll flip the coin here. I'll take Cincinnati for one, just in the sense like this feels like the point of the season where the Big 12 just kind of eats itself, and we're talking about three teams potentially, in that race. This puts BYU in a real tough spot down the stretch, and I think, they would still get the tiebreaker over Utah, so they still would have a path. But this does feel like we're trending towards an upsets in Cincinnati. So we'll take the Bearcats here for my 1-pointer.
Good pick, Brandon Shanahan. And I think, boy, as badly as I want to take TCU, I tried it last week and it absolutely blew up in my face, and they weren't even remotely competitive. So I've got to go Houston for one. At home, I mean, I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be single digits, one possession game at the end, but Houston, they've been getting it done all season. I don't expect that to change.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. So, I mean, we got a good slate here. What are the games that you're going to have your eyes on, top to bottom?
Boy, I think how are you not intrigued by BYU Cincinnati? What a major game. And this one really is going to have a heavy
battle.
Hey, it is. Why not? When I think Big 12, I think of states of Utah and Ohio, and that's what we're going to get. And you know what? I like this game for BYU because I think if they win this game, I mean, they can go to the committee and say, this is a nice road victory.
Yeah.
And it is. It's a great road victory if they can win at Cincinnati on Saturday night, what will be a great atmosphere. So I think that's the number one game I'm keeping an eye on. I think the second game that kind of intrigues me quite a bit is that Kansas-Iowa State game. Just because both programs, I feel like they should be in a better position than they are right now. Granted, Iowa State's bowl eligible. They're 6-4. They're fine. They win on Saturday, they're in good shape for an 8-win season, but that's a great year for Iowa State traditionally. But if you're Kansas, I mean, you have a chance to go bowling, but you lose this one, top final game of the season against Utah. So, I'm just curious where both these teams are currently, with two coaches that are so demanding in terms of their team showing progress, process, and getting better throughout the season. I'm curious where they're at this juncture.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Those are the games I have my eyes on. Of course, Arizona State and Colorado will be on the iPad late at night. If nothing else, just a nice hate watch. Nice palate cleanser. I got a big emotional game going on in Happy Valley. Might be nice to just watch a rival get punished by Jeff Sims. So we'll see how that goes. Then just TCU in Houston has local ties, so I'm fascinated to see how that shapes up. See what kind of bones that TCU has going in, and Houston staring down the barrel of a unbelievable season. 8-2 currently, 9-2 going into the final week of the season would be crazy for Houston. So what would be cool to see them pick up some big momentum. Hopefully not too big to where Willie Fritz becomes a prime coaching candidate in another conference, but rooting for the Cougars. That'd be a fun story going into the bowl week.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's tough not to. I mean, again, considering on paper they were the worst team going into the Big 12 in 2024, a couple of years, shallow years. Nice to see the Cougars rebuild and readjust. No question about that.
I'm right there with you. But lots of Big 12 football going on. Anything in the last week or so that's caught your eye in Big 12 hoops land?
I was going to say, I want to give a big shout out to Arizona Wildcat basketball, Brandon. They've been awesome this last week. They got a win over UConn Wednesday night on the road in Stores, which is a terrific victory for them. And they beat Arizona UCLA. Arizona beat UCLA on a neutral site. Arizona's had themselves quite a little run
Yeah, no kidding.
this last week. So big time stretch for them. BYU fell just short to UConn in Boston Saturday night. They played really well. They shot the ball well, but they just couldn't get it done. And Houston barely survives at Auburn on Sunday. They got it done. Bruce Pearl tried to go shirtless to help his home crowd, but Houston able to get it done. I think we got some exciting Big 12 hoops. We talked a little bit in a light preview last week, but more big games coming up in the near future for sure. And next week, it is Thanksgiving week, which means we got some great holiday tournaments. Next week, folks, I'm telling you, this weekend's going to be great in college sports. Next week is one of the most elite sports viewing times of the year across the board. It is such a fun week. So I can't wait. A lot of good stuff coming up ahead, Brandon Shanahan. I'm excited and curious to see where we're at when we sit here again next week.
I'm juiced for it. Lots of good stuff going on. Any final thoughts before we wrap up for the week?
I just want to give a shout out to Brandon Shanahan himself and his Denver Broncos for
Go
defeating the
Broncos.
Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday. Is Bo Nix the truth? He very might well be. As a Vikings fan, we should have taken him over 9.
All right, and we're clear.